So we're going to turn the floor over to Melody in Greene County, and we're going to take right off where we're talking about supporting local groups, and we are going to visit about supporting the leadership pipeline in local counties. Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. All right. Hey, guys. Mm-hmm. Let me get up and running here.
We can hear you. We can see you.
Mm-hmm. Got the presentation?
Mm-hmm. Right. I think we're looking at the presenter screen, though. Mm-hmm.
Great.
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm. Well, that's not good.
Yeah.
There we go. Is that better?
Perfect.
Okay. Let me move this off my screen now. Okay. All right. Well, guys, today, like Natalie said, we're just going to talk about a leadership component that sometimes can be a scary concept to some individuals and even organizations, but it is something that is really pretty much necessary to keep growing our membership and our organizations across the state, and that is succession planning, or in some cases, kind of depending on where we are within our associations, that could be succession management. And is that something that's really necessary? And absolutely it is, because you've got to always continually be building that pipeline of potential leadership, because that's just a responsibility of any organization, not just within our organizations at the volunteer level, but even corporations in the business world use succession planning, and it's just critical to make sure that we're ensuring the future long-term success and sustainability within our organizations across the state. And like I say, sometimes this is a hard topic to discuss, because oftentimes you'll notice that those two words in gold down there at the bottom, it's replacement planning. We've got leaders across the state that have been maybe sitting in key roles for a lengthy amount of time. And we all know that oftentimes life happens, and sometimes we lose great leaders for whatever the reason may be. So basically, succession planning just gives us the opportunity within our local organizations to identify and develop the leadership within our counties. It's just continually keeping our organization growing. And a good way to look at this is just as a pipeline, because when you're sitting at the helm of your organization and you're looking at, like if you're conducting a monthly meeting, or you're a project leader, committee chair, or whatever that may be, you've got all these people that you're leading on a daily basis or monthly basis or whatever the case may be, but you've got these potential leaders that you can grow right there in your own organization. Or when we're training each year new Master Gardener interns, those are also part of this pipeline. Even taking that a step further, when we're conducting plant sales and garden fairs and things like that to the outside general public, some of those people may also be future Master Gardeners that can be considered potential leaders within our pipeline. So when I'm talking about those key leaders, again, I've kind of alluded to some of that can be our local boards. And of course, all across the state, we've got some different structures in place for that. And we'll spend a little time talking about that later. But also talking about our, again, project leaders and committee chairs. It's anyone that's going to be serving in any kind of leadership capacity within our organizations. So I think Natalie sent this out yesterday about, just a question to think about. This is nothing I'm going to ask for a show of hands. It's kind of hard to do for us on Zoom, but just to give you all something to think about as you leave today and start meeting with your organizations in the future. When you look at your current board, what's going to describe that best? Do you have 50% that are serving a first or second term? Or do you have 50% that have served more than 2 terms? Or even take that a step, higher, and, do you have 3/4 of your membership that has served in some of these leadership roles for more than 2 terms? So again, that's nothing that's being critical of any individuals or any organizations, but sometimes, we need to take a step back and look, where we are, where we have been, and then where we want to be moving in the future, because some potential deficits that could occur when we have long-standing leaders in the same role year after year after year is we can get a little stale. We can get a little stagnant, and it's, you know, all about maintaining the status quo, and nothing really changes. And, you know, sometimes from an individual or even an organizational standpoint, change can be hard. And, you know, if it's not broke, you know, why fix it, or whatever that old saying is. But, you know, from the organizational standpoint, you have to look again at maintaining sustainability. And we've heard so many exciting things from Natalie this morning, and Suzanne for the Search for Excellence. You know, these are things that over time have helped sustain us statewide, and then again at the local level. And it's just about maintaining the viability of us as Master Gardener organizations throughout the state, because it's oftentimes looking back at the amount of time that's been invested to get these associations off the ground. I mean, we have some associations that have been here since the inception of the program. And then we have some associations across the state that are brand new, and there's even some counties that are looking to, you know, start a Master Gardener Association. So this is going to be a critical point for them too. But there's been a lot of energy and productivity spent on getting the organization where it's at today. And we have to remember that, because, again, sometimes the same old thinking is going to yield the same old results. And one of my favorite quotes is, if you always do what you've always done, you're always going to get what you've always got. So sometimes we just need to consider how we're going to plan for the future. And again, that's just a critical role within any organization. And we can take that from a personal perspective too, not just from the organizational standpoint. So just to kind of take that a little bit further, you know, when we look at why most of you are probably volunteering within the Master Gardener organization, it's meaningful to you. You're creating impact. There's some accessibility there. You've got the right skills. You know, we all love to play in the dirt, and sometimes it's about, you know, the money. It's not a very costly project or endeavor to get started in. But on the flip side, we've all been in classes, or we've trained new interns, we've recruited new folks. They may start through the program and maybe they fall off after a year, and we never see or hear from those individuals again. You know, and I mean, that could be just because that wasn't what they thought it was going to be and it wasn't meaningful to them. But sometimes it's because there's a little bit of disconnect there from our leadership at the local level. Maybe not being asked personally to do some things, not being involved with the planning, just lack of info about opportunities or lack of follow through. And then sometimes money plays a factor in that realm as well. But again, just to tie that back, as far as individuals that we have that have been serving in the same role year after year, we just don't want to have those individuals burn out, because as a result, you know, maybe our organizations can suffer from that too, and not just our individual leaders becoming stagnant and a little bit stale and doing whatever's always worked in the past, but our organizations can fall into that as well. And that can be dangerous in the long term. So here's another little quote to think about. The first responsibility of a leader is to develop a person to replace them. And sometimes that's hard for some people because they've been doing it for so long and it's a part of who they are, and it gives them something to do. But at the same time, when you accept a leadership role, whether you've been nominated, elected, appointed, whatever the case may be, one of the things you need to be doing in that leadership capacity is thinking about, you know, who out of this group within this pipeline, you know, could replace me on down the road. And you'll notice here it says to identify 4 individuals, because the reality of life is, if, you know, we start grooming one individual, that's not always good. You got to have a backup plan. And you'll see there that identify 4, because on average, you're going to have one that's going to flat out refuse. They don't want to be in that kind of leadership capacity. One will disappoint, one will move on, and then you'll have one that'll actually accept that kind of position. And again, it's just about going back to that pipeline. When you're an individual sitting in the president's chair or the treasurer, secretary, whatever those cases may be, project leader, committee chair, whatever, always be looking to your pipeline. Always be looking to see who you can groom to take your place. because again, there can only be one of you. We can only have one leader at any one given time serving in those capacities. But I like this picture. This is probably my favorite slide in the whole presentation, because we'll just say, for instance, this is a president of a local organization, and you see them reaching out there and pulling a new president on board, and you see how that arrow is placed, because again, it's all about leading the organization forward and doing great things. So that's what we have to be doing from an individual standpoint when we're setting in those leadership roles. And I use the Tennessee Smart Yards kind of as an analogy here too, because I think most of you have probably seen this at some point, but one of the themes there is planting the right place, or the right plant in the right place. And if we compare that to our local organizations, it's all about planting the right people with the right skills, and that actually is a component of the succession leadership. And we're going to have that ongoing without the fear of the sustainability of the organization perishing as a result of not having people lined up in succession for those roles. So to kind of go into a little bit more in depth as far as succession planning and how you sit down as a group, whether that be as your board being the group, your entire membership is the group, lots of different ways to kind of plan this long term. But just a few things that I wanted to kind of review were strategic planning. And that's another one of those two words that people get a little bit nervous about. But this is one of those things that can actually sustain the organizations long term. Number one, because you're developing a long-term plan, and it's kind of this living document that guides the direction of your organization forward. And it puts everyone on the same page. So everyone knows what you're doing right now and where we're moving into the future. And the key there, again, is that everyone has input. It's not just your board that's governing that process, it's your entire membership. So every single member within your organization has ownership of the strategic plan. And I'm going to be really basic here, but basically we're just identifying skills that are going to be necessary to continue to achieve the mission or the scope of what we're trying to do. You're going to sit down during that planning process and figure out what resources you currently have, but what you need to get you where you want to be. You know, is it a 5-year plan, 10-year plan, whatever the case may be. But it's kind of putting those puzzle pieces together, and it makes it a little bit less scary when there's a plan that's actually on paper, a document that's going to guide the future leadership and the membership forward. And again, it all goes back to attracting those new volunteers. But at the same time, we've got to continually inspire and motivate our current membership. You know, those are the ones that have been there. They're the ones with the experience that have helped guide the organization to where it is now. So we don't want to lose those individuals in the process. So for those that know me, you know that I love maps. So I always have to throw a map picture in any presentation I do. So I thought, how better to illustrate this really than, you know, it's a two-way divided highway. You've got your current members, but you're going to have to recruit members, new people at the same time. And all those, again, fit into that leadership pipeline. It's just both of these groups of people basically working in tandem. We've got our current membership. We're bringing new people on board. We want them to feel welcome. We want them to be engaged. We want our current members to be inspired. And when we're doing that, we're kind of already doing some of that succession planning without even knowing that we're doing it. Another step in the succession planning is just valuing volunteers. And of course, those of you that are sitting in leadership roles right now, and even those of us as agents across the state, we need to look to valuing, because we've got to be able to recognize and value the skill set of each one of our people to be able to place them in planning and programming facets within the organization that they can actually grow themselves. And we also want to be honoring volunteers. We've heard from Suzanne this morning about the search for excellence, and what better way are we going to recognize both our individual master gardeners as well as our county associations across the state. You know, we need to be always looking to reward achievements for those individuals. The third point there is just developing a culture. And a lot of us have that culture already established at the county level, but just to kind of remind folks, we want to be inclusive. You know, again, when we're outside of our local organizations, something as simple as speaking to a local Ruritan club, or again, conducting plant sales, or within our demonstration gardens, we want an environment that says, you know, Master Gardeners, we're the place you want to be. You know, we have fun, we're learning lots, we're educating other people, but we always have that component of, you know, how people feel is whether, or it's a big factor on whether or not they're going to continue with the organization. So we've got to be really careful about developing that culture. And the fourth point is just about communicating and promoting. You know, whether you're a current leader now or you're looking to become a leader in your organization, you've always got to be promoting Master Gardeners. And one of the big ways that we do that, of course, now with the social media, all the various outlets that we have there. And then you heard from Natalie talking about the collaboration that we're going to be doing in the spring, cultivating collaboration. Yeah, that's the key word there. But lots of ways that we can promote our organizations and move it forward, talking to your county commission groups, you know, partnering with other like-minded agencies and organizations at the county level. I like this quote because your network is your net worth. And there's a lot of truth to that, because if you're just Master Gardeners, then you're just Master Gardeners. You know, you've got to be kind of out there, sometimes working with other groups, conducting business with some outside organizations, because that could be the missing puzzle piece. And that can help you bridge those gaps and make not only your organization stronger, but theirs as well, and just help build the overall organization even at the state level. And again, it's just about effective communication and meeting challenges head on. And for some organizations across the state, even this whole concept of succession planning could be a challenge. It could be a challenge even for some of the smaller organizations, because you don't have as many people in your pipeline as some of the other organizations. So there's going to be challenges, but it's all about sitting down with your organization and being creative to come up with ways to plan for the future. Because if we're not planning for our future now, then we might not have a future as an organization. And it's a very real possibility, because we can't keep expecting the same people to keep leading us time after time. They're not always going to be there. So with that being said, just a couple of points I wanted to bring up, because if this is something that you take back to your local organizations and to your membership, and start maybe thinking about some succession planning strategies, or even entering into a strategic plan at the local level. One thing I just want to mention is about some of those current roles now. And again, I know we're structured a little bit differently across the state. Some have president, vice president, secretary, treasurer, and so on and so forth. Some are operating under the president, president-elect, first vice president, second vice president, past president, that kind of structure. But irregardless of how you're operating, your vice president or your president-elect is a pretty valuable person. No matter if you're nominating from the floor or if you've got a nominating committee in place, however you're doing that at the local level, you know, make sure that this individual realizes that that's a pretty big role. Our president has a huge job, but the vice president is the one that's being groomed to take the reins. This is going to be an opportunity for that individual to grow into that full leadership role. And that needs to kind of be an expectation of that individual, because you've already got that pipeline in place. And then again, you know, like I said earlier, when that person gets to be in that role, then they're going to start identifying, you know, potential leadership within that pipeline to help follow in their footsteps as well. And then another individual that sometimes gets overlooked is your past chair or your past president. Once they roll off as president, sometimes they just kind of melt back into the membership. People kind of forget about them, but don't overlook those people, because they're very valuable. They've been sitting at the helm of, you know, the leadership for however long your term limits are, however long they've been sitting there. But, utilize those people, utilize those experiences, the things they learned, their successes, their failures. And a lot of that transition is going to depend on that relationship between your incoming president and that past president. But maintaining that past president or past chair on your boards and in your leadership roles, for at least a year gives the opportunity for the growth of the total organization. I just like this little picture because it's kind of goofy looking, and I thought, how better does this fit for what we're talking about? It's like, what? I'm the vice president. That means I got to be president next. And then you got your president up here smiling real big saying, oh, yeah, that'd be you, my friend. And then you see back there in the back, that one is kind of in the shadow. And I just use that to illustrate our past president. Just don't forget about them. There's some exceptional experience there. And the last thing I want to leave you with is just remember, however your group goes about selecting officers or any kind of leadership role, think about how you're choosing those individuals. Do you choose them based on their skill set, on their knowledge, on their competency level, or are they being chosen because of their popularity status within the group or their willingness to serve? Because we've all been in organizations where we hear, oh, are you gonna stay on as president? Are you gonna do that again? Oh, you will? Well, I will if nobody else will do it. We want to get our organizations away from that type of conversation, from that type of chatter, because we really want our organizations to be strong. We want our state organization to be strong. And in order for that to occur, the foundation are these associations at the county or multi-county level. And those foundations need to be strong to help move the entire organization at the local level forward, as well as our state organization. And we have the capacity there. And we have that potential pipeline of leaders all across the state of Tennessee that are in place. And we're all out there recruiting all the time for new master gardeners to come on board. So I just ask that you think about some of those things, really consider setting down and putting a succession plan in place to help move the organization forward.